All right, Derek, we finally dragged you in here. This is good, man. This is really good. It's been, I think the last time I saw you in person, it's been many years.
Oh gosh, I think it was before COVID.
It was definitely before COVID.
Yes.
Might have been years before that.
Yes.
It might have been in our Burlington office.
Yes, it was.
Which is then.
But we know we read about each other. We see each other on social media, and we've always sort of got along.
Yeah.
Well, so I'm happy to be here, man.
Some of our team's gone to your conferences over the years too.
Yes, yeah.
It's where we got one of the ideas from during the break. I think it was Mike that told us that at your conference, was it you that after a break you guys would start a song low and then turn the music up to try to get people's attention?
Yes, yeah.
See, we got that.
Actually, we would play Miley Cyrus. Singing Dolly Parton's Jolene.
Oh, there you go.
And it just got louder and louder and louder. And then when we stopped Jolene, the last person back in the room had to tell a joke. Well, we'd never made him do that, but nobody wanted to be last.
Yeah.
So when you heard it,
Yeah, that was good. That was good. Yeah, we did an AC/DC song, so a different approach.
Yes,
But so look, man, you're someone that we crossed paths years ago. Always respected what you did. I think what I liked from the apartment side of what you did is that it wasn't really about apartment sales. You were just a wealth of information. So you brought the knowledge with you. It wasn't so much this transactional stuff. Like you really studied what you were doing, had an in-depth knowledge of it, which at that time, I still haven't met really anyone that does it your way, but I thought that was kind of cool. And I think that's maybe why it resonated with us for sure. It stood out.
Yeah, you know, brokerage gets a little bit of a bad name for some reason. People don't like brokers. I don't know why. And I guess I started off thinking that. But I got into the industry more as a sales trainer and a consultant. And I did that for a solid 20 years. So it wasn't like I learned the tricks of the trade, I learned the trade. And then at age 50, man, I got my real estate license. So I only started doing brokerage well into my career.
Oh, so right? that was when we around when we first met.
2007 is when I got my license.
Yeah, so that's when we first met, because we started in 2000, right around 2000, end of 2006, so right around the same time.
Yeah, just started. But the interesting thing was, I came out of the gate probably, I think the year that I came out of the gate, I was probably the second or third highest grossing apartment broker in Canada. And I said, no, it's been 20 years of in the trenches, learning and teaching the business to people, right? And I just made that pivot. So I think the key here is, we're talking to a lot of people here, right? The key, and I appreciate what you said about us, is keeping the same client and offering different services as the market changed and as the client changed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
So our clients got older. So I've been at this gig for like 35 years now, right? And my clients have gotten older. So I had to realize that I have to make the transition from the father to the son, because or the daughter who was taking over the business. And now I'm in the third generation, right? So I think I've made what looks like a really broad-based living doing many things, maybe off 30, 40, 50 families. Did
your investors, because the scale at which the buildings you do, it's quite a large scale, and you can share that with everyone, but did your investors then mature to that as well, and you saw them start in a smaller space? The clients that you worked with, they started in a smaller space, and as they went through maybe the son or the daughter or whatever, they kind of grew into these other apartments as well?
You build a relationship with people in tough times. That's where you build relationships.
Yeah,
right now is a tough time. This is the time to be thinking about your clients. So I met many of my clients now who are worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Some are worth billions of dollars. I met these guys when they were, I'm trying to think, their net worth was lower than mine at the time. And now they've been rock stars, right? And they've done it through taking risk. They've done it through development, and they've done it through just doing it over and over and over again. And the guys who I've seen that really do well, small, lean, and they build the same product over and over again and just make it a little better every time. Mm-hmm. Fair enough?
So they have one thing that works for them, and they just stick with it.
Cookie cutter, rinse and repeat.
Yeah. It's so hard. Like, that is a lot harder to do than people often think, because I don't know what it is, but as humans, we seem to always just look for the next thing. So, but if you have something that works, to continue to stick with it, it makes the most sense. But so often you get off track, and then you look back and you're like, why the hell did I stop doing whatever that was that worked?
Yeah, it's the shiny object syndrome.
It's impossible.
Where we're doing something, we just saw something a little bit better.
Yeah.
Go over there. I think having do you want to be a lake 1 mile wide and 1 inch deep? Or do you want to be sort of the Marianas Trench, right? And I think that, and it can be very appealing to be doing many things, thinking you're broad basing, you're diversifying, you're getting alternative incomes and things like that. But, once you figure out what you're doing, I think you go deep and you just do that. So I've strayed a couple of times from the apartment and the rental sector. I've had my head handed back to me.
Really? Yeah. We've all been there. We've all been there.
What did the British say? Stick to your knitting.
Yeah.
Right?
Come up just a little bit closer to the mic.
Yeah. Stick to your knitting. Right? And I think that's really what, all your listeners, it's what I've learned. It's what I tell my children. It's what I tell my grandchildren. In fact, I would, rather than saying stick to your knitting, I'd say rather find your unique ability. Right? What are you really good at? What do you love doing? What could you do that you would almost do for free? So I love speaking. I love communicating. I love teaching, right? And then I did that. And then that led to brokerage. That led to consulting. And today it's led to equity raising. So we're raising money now, right? But all from the same people.
Got it.
Keep your customer.
Yeah.
The cost of customer acquisition is very high.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So keep the customer and just offer them different.
Build the relationships. Don't be transactional.
Don't. Yeah. And it's hard when you're paid transactionally.
I know.
Right?
I know. And especially you brought up tough times and stuff. And, when we're in times like now when a lot of people are feeling squeezed,
yes,
it's easy to go down a route of trying to grab for some cash someplace and to maybe do something transactional and, not focus as much on the relationship. But like we were talking earlier before we started recording, now it's, if you do the right things now, you come out of these times stronger than ever, I think.
Oh my gosh, you'll come out with loyalty from your clients where you're not going to a broker bake-off. You're their person.
Yeah.
And when they want to sell, you're their person. Look, it's been hard for the last couple of years where we haven't known what the market is. So someone says, what's the price? What's the cap rate? My correct answer was, we don't know. Right?
Yeah, because there's just not the transactions happening to see.
And unless you have to sell, this is probably not a good time to sell. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to say as a broker. Right? But that's the reality.
Yeah.
Unless you had to sell, this isn't the time to sell. Because the way you get the highest price by getting multiple offers and doing a competitive bidding situation, well, you're only getting one offer. Right?
Yeah. There's just not as much money flying around, right?
There's just not as much. And there's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines.
Mm-hmm. So, you see that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
There is, I call it a lousy $100 million. I mean, so many of our clients, recognizing that we're doing larger deals.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I got it.
Lower volume, higher size has basically been our business model. I call it, literally, I joke it's called a lousy $100 million because so many people have that sitting on the sidelines. And really, I think it's our job as real estate transaction professionals is to find that money a home. Fair enough?
Yeah.
And when you think about it, people are sitting on tons of money. Maybe they're getting 4 or 5% interest, which sounds very attractive. But after you pay taxes on it, it's 2.5%. And I mean, you're way behind inflation, right? So you want that money out there working for you. And maybe it's not the right time to buy real estate, but it may be the right time to do a joint venture on developments. It may be the right time to lend on a second mortgage or something like that. Yeah.
Are you having those discussions with your clients? So with people looking at a lousy $100 million, I'd imagine they're looking at inflation and looking at the $100 million and thinking, well, holy shit, I got to do something with this, or it gets whittled away.
But it's a real dilemma when you've got that money because if you don't want to catch a falling knife. So everyone's waiting for the bottom of the market.
Sure, of course. Everyone always tries to do that. Yeah.
And how do you find the bottom market? Well, look, if the investment criteria fits your hurdle rate, and most people, by the way, don't have a hurdle rate. They make their investments based on how they feel.
Really?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I know people who are I'm lucky to know these people are extraordinarily wealthy. And I say to them, like, what's your hurdle rate? Well, that's what you ask an investment manager on Bay Street. You take a wealthy entrepreneur, $100 million, you go, what's your hurdle rate? And he goes, no, it's the relationship I have with the person, right? And so, look, what does it take to do a creative deal? Let's say that's non-transactional, an investment or something like that, right? Who's the guy? Where's the deal? What's the deal? In that order.
Yeah.
What's the deal is, you make a 20% IRR over 4 years. Okay. Where's the deal? Does it fit in my footprint of where I want to invest? But number one, 80% of it is who's the guy.
Yeah, they trust you.
They trust you.
Right. Once you have that relationship, if they trust you.
Well, they're investing with you to make those smaller decisions.
Yeah.
Right. So what we're doing now is we're investing in new apartment construction in the Midwestern United States. Lots of reasons as to why we're doing that. Fair enough. But I would say that in the time my client spends on the deal, and but the most meaningful time is probably I'm going to say it's 10 or 12 hours with the developer. Fair enough?
Yeah.
In boardrooms, over dinner, maybe sometimes doing shots. Fair enough?
Yeah.
But you've got to get to understand the people that you're going to write that large check. And we're talking about checks of $20 million, right? That are being written into deals, right?
Yeah.
It's about the character of the person and what happens when the wheels go off the buggy, if they do, and the problem is not in the contract. You can't anticipate it. It's how are they going to behave? How are they going to react? Character is extraordinary.
So it's a judgment call. But what doesn't that sometimes, because you hear about these Ponzi schemes and these types of things, so doesn't it leads to that too? Because if you get that judgment call wrong on that in that aspect of things, you go down a path you shouldn't go down.
Right. And that's why that due diligence on the person is so important, because some real estate syndications are basically that. So what's the recognition of a problem? Well, front end fee loaded, a massive front end fee loaded. Look, there's got to be the people have to live, but there's got to be a back end part.
Sure, yeah.
It can't be the promoter gets it all up front.
Yeah, there's got to be something based on results.
So I think getting alignment is important. And what I realized with my clients is that, look, I'm asking them to write a pretty big check, right? But I tell them that, look, my fee plus I'm writing a check into the deal and I get paid after you. They love that.
Yeah.
Get alignment, right? So the return of the money to the client first, the pref return, right? Might be 8%, right? After that, on disposition or refinancing, then we share the profits, right? With the guy who put the deal together and with the guy who built it. Now, the guy who built it is getting fees along the way. He's got to live. And you don't want to cut into the fees of your developer because he's got real costs. So he's got 60, 70, 80 people, right, in their shop just to get these buildings built. So you've got to think about all that. When we
were approached by a number of these syndications early on for smaller, maybe some similar type projects as well, depending on them. And at one point, there was one company going around, and the company going around, it was well known around the GTA, and they were offering a return, like a cash flow component to the investment. I'm like, well, it's a development opportunity. I go, where's this cash flow component
coming? It's your
coming?
money being paid back to you.
I know. And then I'm like, well, these guys are over raising and giving the money back, but people weren't talking about that. They're just like, oh, this is great. I get this return, plus I get at the outside. I'm like, they're over raising capital to pay out those monthly installments or quarterly, whatever they were.
And I think they're dealing with people that are maybe unsophisticated. Right?
Yeah, maybe that's why.
You've got to understand that. The math isn't complicated, but you've got to understand the math behind this thing, right?
Anytime someone in real estate came to us and they're like, look, it's all guaranteed. I was like, okay, well, I'm done. I don't need to hear anymore, because if it's all guaranteed in real estate, it's not for me.
And on paper, it looks like it's all guaranteed, but what's behind the guarantee? I would say that the very first thing that you should do if you're going to make a real estate investment is go visit the real estate. Go walk it, kick it, smell it. And the majority of partners don't do that.
Oh, sure.
They just don't go look at it.
Yeah.
I look, early in my career, a long time ago, I syndicated some limited partnerships where I was a general partner. And it shocked me that nobody visited the real estate. And it wasn't far.
Yeah.
They just didn't want to know. They trusted me.
Yeah.
Right? They trusted me, which was, good enough. But I would say,
well, it was good enough because you didn't take advantage of that trust.
Yeah, but I was pretty young then. I made some mistakes. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I made some mistakes, and I was surprised that and I offered, look, I'm going to take you there. I'll meet you there. We'll tour you through it before you sign. Or every year we do our annual meeting. I always say to people, do you want to come and look at the real estate? People, and that's the point where I go back to character, right? People want to just make a simple, hassle-free investment.
Yeah.
Fair enough?
100%.
Right. And look, real estate comes with risk, not that much risk, but some. And as long as you structure the deal properly up front, right, been very transparent and clear with people, I think that most times the deal is going to work out as long as you don't fee it to death up front. Mm-hmm. That's what I'd say. Listen, be very careful of that.
So then with what you've seen now, so you've been through a lot, you've seen different times, you've seen different markets. I remember speaking to you around the 2008, 2009 time period as well, because there was, it
looked grim.
In finance. Look what happened in the States. It was great. Canada, we skirted through that one. Yeah. And now you look around today. I mean, we're in a much different situation today. We were talking earlier about just the debt and how much it's grown since then. Like, if we talked about what the debt is now versus what it was then, at that time,
it's unbelievable.
You would think that it's like, in theory, it could get to that point, but what are the probabilities? Very, very low. Right. So, like, how are you looking at these things now then? Because real estate investors as a whole, apartment, our investors, they've all benefited from this run up in debt that's pushed up these asset prices, right?
Yeah, we've all got our ideas, we've all got our thoughts, and quite frankly, nobody knows.
Yeah.
I can tell you what I think.
Sure, yeah.
But for what it's worth, but I'm lucky to have some extraordinarily smart and extraordinarily wealthy clients. By the way, wealth and intelligence go tied together very, very highly. Okay? So there's people that have made a lot of money, most of them have made it themselves, and they don't have a silver spoon in their mouth, they're just very, very smart. I think I get a lot of answers like, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
They say, I don't know. But you have to make a bet on inflation or deflation. That's a hard bet. So my guess is probably inflation, which is good for real estate, good for hard assets. Fair enough. Deflation is probably good for cash, waiting for the price to drop. Or stagflation.
Yeah, okay. Well, the stagflation is different.
And then gold is maybe your answer.
See, so we look at deflation. When I look at deflation, I'm the same boat. I don't know. Yep. What do I know? But I just know what I've seen around me. And in my time that I've been following this in a little bit more serious manner. So it really was when 2008 hit. It was when Tom and I got serious because we're like, what the hell just happened? Yeah. And we wanted to understand things. And we look around, the banks never really seem to lose. And in a deflationary environment with Canada, with as much debt that they have out on real estate as they have, if there was a serious bout of deflation, there would be some serious banking problems. And I don't think that's I think the probability of that is less than them shoring things up by expanding the money supply.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think inflation is likely the outcome of this, but you can't be sure.
No, you're right.
You just can't be sure. So I think I'm not a huge fan of the stock market because there's no control. You can't create value.
Especially lately, you just,
P ratios are like nuts, right?
Yeah, it's all based on news. Like this is this rumor is going to, this is going to happen. You don't know what the heck's going on.
Yeah. So I think, some well-acquired real estate, cash-flowing real estate. But for those who want to make higher profits, development is probably where you want because it will cash flow. It will cash flow.
Because you know the numbers from the beginning.
You know the numbers, and if you do your homework properly, you'll be able to know if the deal's going to work or not. And if you're building simple, like I like simple product, like 3-story walk up, slab on grade, surface parking. You're not taking a risk on the development. Your rents are at the lower end of the spectrum on relatively new. The client doesn't care whether it's built out of concrete or wood, or whether it's 4 stories or 5 stories or 10 stories.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So I think that a combination. Where were we? We're talking about where you should be today.
Yeah.
Right. So I think where you should be today is let's reframe it. You got money. What should you do with it? Well, number one, I would say invest in your children. Let's get back to 100%. Let's just invest in your children. Yeah. Teach your children how to be robust. Make sure that they're skilled. Make sure that they've got grit. Fair enough. So that's the first thing I'd say. It's probably just put your money into your family. Build your family culture. Because, I'm the end of the baby boom, right? You are after that. So what are you, a Gen X, Gen Y?
Yeah.
You're something like that, right?
Yeah. Okay. I'm not the problem. You're the baby boomers. You were the problem. I'm the solution.
Yes. And quite frankly, baby boomers have had it good. Baby boomers have a lot of money. I mean, why am I able to collect Canada Pension and OAS? Yet I get it, right? Like I haven't returned the checks, right? But we got to really think about some of the benefits that we've got in the country, right? Because it's tougher. So let's go back to what you should be doing with money, right? So number one is build robust, well-rounded, well-educated children. Fair enough. Number two, or maybe it's even number one for that, is take care of your health.
Yeah, I was going to say number one for that. But yes.
Yeah. Take care of your health. I made it pretty public. At 55, I had a heart attack. Like boom, right in the office.
Oh, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, I was doing a pitch on a Friday afternoon in front of a client, and I had a heart attack, and I didn't tell him.
Wow.
I got through the pitch. I think I was starting to turn green, And finally, I walked out of the room, and one of my staff looked at me and said, "We got to take you to the hospital." Anyway, that's not the point.
Would you have considered yourself out of shape of that? Like in hindsight, were you out of shape?
No, I was 30 pounds heavier, and I was
really
working out and exercising and things like that. But I think so in one way, I'm sort of thankful that, because all the hardest things in your life are the raw material for future growth. So that made me smarten up. Fair enough.
Yeah.
You should, you should superimpose an old picture of me before. You know what I mean?
Oh, we can. I'm going to make a note here. Hold on one second.
Yeah. So, yes. Yeah. Heck, if I knew we were doing some video, I would have worn a tighter shirt. But like you,
you look good, man. You look good. Don't worry. Jeez. But 30 pounds would be a big difference on someone.
Yeah. But anyway, so
okay. So invest in the kids. Invest in your health.
Yeah. Invest in your health, but also I think invest in your mind.
Yeah,
right.
Of course.
But
that is your health.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm in coaching programs. Fair enough. I'm thinking I would go to at least 5 conferences a year. Fair enough.
Yeah. There's so much.
You're immersing yourself in it. And a couple of conferences I went to last year, I thought, oh man, these weren't very good. But you know what? There were a couple of little things I learned that 6 months ago, I went, oh my gosh, that's why I know that. That allowed me to move this deal forward.
Yeah.
Allow me to overcome that objection. So I would say invest in, let's say, okay, so invest in your mind, your mindset. I think that's a lot of problems, our mindset. So one of the mindsets that your listeners could be having if they're a younger person saying, I'll never be able to afford a home. Or I hear parents say, how will my children ever afford a home?
More and more you're hearing that, right?
You know what the answer to that question is? Your children become landlords. And we build duplexes. Mm-hmm. We build basement apartments. We've written a book on it called The Self-Funding House.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, but you get the idea, but it was a mind shift change. So we had this problem where people did not have enough money for a house. And everyone said, well, we got to bring the price of housing down. Let's get rid of development charges. Let's build smaller houses. I said, well, that's probably not going to change. What if we got more money for the people to buy that house? Mm-hmm. Well, more money came from rental income in the basement. It
changes the numbers. We've seen a number of people do that. You know what? Even when I was growing up in Mississauga, one of the things that always struck me as a good idea was in Mississauga, some of the housing stock was basically like there were these semis that you drove into the lower level. There was a garage there and one entrance, and then the stairs up to the second level. So it was just
That's
2 stories.
The house I grew up in. You just described it.
Yeah. So I used to see those in Mississauga. I'm like, man, I think that should be my first house. I'll buy one of those and I'll rent out one level and I'll live on the other level. That was the idea. And we're seeing some of our younger investors do the same. That's how they start out, and then they kind of move from there.
So let's just repeat this, okay? So if you are a young person today and you think home ownership is out of your reach, well, if you think traditionally, it may be. But if you have a mind shift change of saying, I'm going to become my first house is my first business. By the way, all the skills I learned in my first house, which was a house turned to a duplex, turned to a triplex, and then turn back into a house as my family.
Yeah, just the life lessons in that alone.
Oh, sales, marketing, taxation. I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you today had I not bought that house and converted it, right? It's the start of your business. Mm-hmm. So your mind, your body, your children, your family, fair enough. I think some charity in there is also pretty good for you. It detaches you from money. And then we've talked about investments, right? Like we talked about investments, so the gold, real estate, cash.
Yeah.
And we talked about Bitcoin a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin is really interesting, but you got to spend time on Bitcoin.
When did you start looking at Bitcoin?
You know, I had heard about Bitcoin when it was $6,000.
Okay.
I wasn't smart enough to invest in it, but I went online.
So that was what, 2016?
Yeah, something like that. And I thought, I'll never understand it. It's garbage. Doesn't mean anything. Until I started looking into it. And the way that I got my education on Bitcoin was there was a professor at MIT, Gary, someone, I can't remember his name, but there's about 8 hours of YouTube videos on.
Oh, really?
And I watched those. And I went, holy smokes, I get it.
Yeah. Did you get it because you were a real estate and gold guy already? Like, do you think that helped?
Yeah, I was a gold guy, and we've talked about this before.
Yeah.
Right? I watched before that something by a guy named Chris Martinson called The Crash Course. Did you watch that?
I don't know if I've watched that, but I've seen other stuff from Chris. I don't think I've seen that exact thing.
Crash Course. I started listening to it about 8 o'clock one evening. I didn't stop for 8 hours. I listened to it solid like 3, 4 in the morning or something, and I said, oh my gosh, there's a train wreck coming. I should be in gold.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And then I dollar cost average into gold starting around probably $800.
Yeah.
Right. So it's been.
So you had the big, you benefited from the big run up at that time.
Yeah. But you had to be patient. Like this isn't, and then Bitcoin is, it's not Bitcoin or gold. I think it's Bitcoin and gold.
I think it's anything that can serve the same purpose that those serve that can benefit you. To me, I'm not one of the hardcore, it's Bitcoin or nothing, everything else needs to die a death and go away. I'm like, no, I think there's a room for real estate. I think there's room for gold.
100% Bitcoin.
No, yeah, I believe that too. I mean, it's an income producing asset,
yes.
Right? So you have this real estate and you can take profits from that and store that wealth if you want to in gold, Bitcoin and stuff like that, right? So that's the way I'm seeing it as well. Something you said that was really interesting though, about the buildings, about the 3-story walk-up buildings. Yes. That's to me like the starter home category of multi-unit. And it's funny that you said that, because to me, and I could be wrong, but I'm I always feel like that's the safest category. So in the investments we do, in the non-multi, or maybe they're single family, but they could be duplex, triplex. That's the starter home category there. Because in any market, even the one we're seeing now, up, down, sideways in any area, that's always where the most transactions are happening. So if I want assets that are liquid, I'm still able to liquidate those because they appeal to the most amount of people. Versus if I have some
bigger it gets, the less liquid it gets.
Right. So as the mom and pop investors, we deal with a lot of people that are starting out. Maybe it's the first property. Maybe they've have 10, 15, 20 or but somewhere around that. But they can, that's always one thing I like. But I was curious. It was interesting to hear you say that in the multi space, that you're like, yeah, those are they're just nice little cookie cutter things.
Yeah. I've noticed this. Every large developer I know started off building one house.
Oh, really?
It's like the starter kit. Fair enough. So I'm saying to people, every investor you probably know, you start off by buying one house.
Yeah.
You start off by buying one house.
Simple. So usually super simple.
And I think that for the people getting started, and the more people we have doing this, the more velocity we have, the more money we have, the more housing we have.
Yeah.
Right? And I don't even, we haven't touched on this affordability issue that we talk about all the time.
Let's touch on it. You have 3 kids,
yes.
Right? And now you just said before, which I was shocked by, but you have 12 grandkids.
Yes.
So your kids are probably past the point now, so they've probably...
You better put a picture of me on there, because they're going to think I'm an old guy.
I'm going... No, they have the video. They have video. I told you look good. But they're going to see this. So the 12 grandkids.
Yes.
So your kids are probably established now, yes. Right. So because they have children and stuff like that. But yeah, so we're going into this next stage. What if the kids were 10 years younger? What if the grandkids were 10 years older at another stage of their lives now? What do you tell them?
Well, the jobs that are going to exist in the future are not going to be the jobs that we have today. Fair enough. So much stuff is getting just automated in AI.
The jobs we have today didn't exist 30 years ago. Right. How many programmers and all sorts of stuff, right?
Media people.
Yeah, of course.
So you don't know what's coming. I think today, before, for my daughters, I really focused in on them getting a trade. And I felt because they were women and I knew they would need flexibility when they had children. And lo and behold, they had a bunch of them, right? So I kind of guided them towards more education that would lead to more professional roles. If you read the book, The Millionaire Next Door, it tells you should do that with your children, right?
Especially, I read it a long time ago, so kids weren't in my mind. I don't remember that at all.
All right. So I remember that. The majority of millionaires, children actually didn't take over their business. They became professionals because they knew what it took to run a business. They knew the Sunday nights where they were watching the sales coming. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The hearts, and they didn't want that for their children, right? So, but then there's a downside to that, and that when you become a prep professional, it kind of beats the entrepreneurial out of you. The more education you have, the more risk averse you become, because you can run the numbers in your head. Do you see what I'm saying?
You know what you don't know versus you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's an element of risk that entrepreneurs take that's this little magic or pixie dust on them, that they go, you took that risk, right?
Yeah.
I remember one time I did a feasibility study for a client, and he hadn't built the building before. And we did the feasibility study, we came, and then 6 months later I went to visit him, and he had started the building, and I went, you started the building? He said, yeah, you told me to. He said, you told me to, right? And do you see my point?
Yeah, just like that.
Yeah. So that ability to accept risk, live with risk, be able to sleep at night, not everybody has it. I think 2, 3, 4, 5% of people have that. And by the way, buying a house is not that level of risk.
Yeah.
Buying a house, I'm that 20, 30, 40% of people. I'm talking about where you bet the farm.
Yeah, gotcha.
You've got your name on the mortgage. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes, yeah.
But in an environment like we're in today, so we're in this inflationary environment, we think that we both kind of agree that probably if we had to place a bet, if we're betting on more inflation, growing debt.
I would think so.
And then you're in a professional situation, so your wages haven't kept up.
No.
So then you end up falling further and further behind in that scenario because, even if you go back to The Millionaire Next Door, that was written at a time when we didn't have the inflation rates that we're seeing now. And I'm not talking about this formal inflation rate. I'm talking about the growth in the money supply, right? Because if you're talking about hurdle rate with your clients, if you look at the growth in the money supply hurdle rate, that should be, to me, if you're going to put your money out there, you got to at least be matching that.
$100,000 your income isn't what it used to be. Oh, God. And $1 million isn't what it used to be.
Well, $1 million. When I was a kid, I thought if I lived in $1 million house, I'd be on TV.
Yeah.
Like I thought I had it made. Like an MTV was going to go tour my house.
Yes, yeah. So it's a problem. It's a problem, and I think conventional thinking is going to get you conventional results. So I think you need to think outside the box. Look, one of the rules that I have in place is when I hang out with people, I always want them to be richer than me, smarter than me, younger than me, and in better shape than me.
Yeah.
I want that person to pull me up.
Yeah.
You don't get all of those always, but you see my point? So you want to be hanging around with people who have a very positive attitude, who have constantly want to learn, and who are constantly pulling you along with them. Mm-hmm. Right? So I spend a lot of time in discussions with people like that when I can. Hey, you fit that bill. You're my new best friend.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But that's a good way to look at it. A lot of people can't do that because of ego.
Yes.
Ego gets in the way, and they feel like they have to posture up and be that person. I find often people will look at me when I'm in a new crowd. I'll be the guy that will sit back more and just kind of listen and observe. I have no problem. I don't need to be like speaking. I'm like, I just want to. I'm like you. I'm like, I just kind of want to learn here. Like, it's interesting to me. I have no problems engaging when the time is there. Right.
The guy that's talking the most isn't always the smartest guy in the room.
Yeah, most often he's not.
Yeah. So look, I think what I would say is that. One of the joys of sort of getting to where I am in my career is I mentor people. And there's a difference between a mentor and a coach. Okay, so a mentor doesn't get paid. A coach gets paid. Like my trainer, I pay him.
Yeah.
He comes there to make me do it. Fair enough. But somebody else, a friend of mine, is a mentor to me on my health and my fitness and so on. Right? So I think that finding a mentor, to the people listening here, finding a mentor is valuable. That mentor in all likelihood is older. That mentor...
Usually, yeah.
But they have to have that unique characteristic of your success is their success. They're not competing with you. They've already achieved what they're going to achieve. In fact, they would love if you could exceed them. Right? You need that kind of spirit and that kind of mindset. That's a mentor.
Yeah.
A coach isn't like that. A coach shows up, does what he's supposed to do, but he's read every book on the topic that you're never going to read.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. Yeah. So I'd say as a trainer, that's a really good example. I've had a business coach for most of my life. Right? I've had a trainer now for a long time. I have a nutritionist, and so on.
What's mentorship to you then? Someone comes to you, they just want to run an idea past you because it's not coaching.
Yeah, no. Mentors will tell you the truth when it hurts. Coaches don't always do that. Mentors will tell you the truth when it hurts. I'm mentoring a guy right now, and he doesn't live in Canada. He met me online. He Googled me, and he said, would you be my mentor? And I said, yeah, I would. And he said, I want to move to Canada. So I said, yeah, I think you should move to Canada. And then every time I talked to him, he postponed it. And he said, he gave me a reason. I said, listen, you told me this. You make a decision one way or the other, right? And I know he needs to move to Canada. He lives in the third world, in a difficult country with difficult challenges and so on. And I said to him, I think you'd be good for Canada. Canada would be good for you. You just need to make up your mind, right? And I told him, and I put it in writing to him. And so a coach wouldn't tell you that. A coach said, well, let's talk about this. A mentor is going to tell you what you need to hear because they're just doing this for a different reason, right? So you think about your financial planner or your lawyer or something. I think they're capable people, but basically a fee for a service, right?
Yeah, you need to remove that element
But that's hard to do without money. So that's where you got to find that mentor. It's hard to find a mentor, right? So I would say if you look for a mentor, first of all, ask people to be a mentor, like formally ask them. Okay.
Yeah.
People have asked me, will you mentor me? And I haven't said yes to everybody, but I'd be interested in doing that to certain kind of people. Like I only want to do top achievers. Like if I'm trying to mentor you out of your parents' basement, that's not going to go well.
No, you need someone that's got some momentum behind them already. Yeah, for sure.
Who wants to do this?
Yeah.
Fair enough? Yeah.
What do you think? So you had that conversation with this guy about coming to Canada. You're a gold person, Bitcoin, real estate.
Yeah.
So that's to me what I would call like I call myself that, like I'm an old school investor. You know what I mean? I believe in that.
Yeah.
So with everything you're seeing now in Canada, if you're looking at that stuff, what do you like? There's some structural problems going on now.
Yeah. Canada. First of all, I moved to Canada from the third world. I was born in Pakistan. I came when I was 8 years old.
Okay.
So, this is a great country. This is a great country.
I agree.
And it's given opportunities to me and people like me and everybody, right? I had a girl that worked for me, and she was Polish. And she said, I moved to Spain. And in Spain, she said, I was this Polish lady on the 5th floor.
Okay.
So when I moved to Canada, I was just a lady on the 5th floor. Right? It's really telling what she said about it. That's the beautiful thing about this country. I think politically we've lost our way. We probably have the worst prime minister we ever had in history. I'm not alone in thinking that.
No, I think the majority of the country thinks that right now. Yeah.
So, but he's been bad for a long time.
Yeah, right? from I mean, I would call it day 1 probably, but I mean, you could say day 10.
Yes. So right. the problem is that, it doesn't take long to destroy something. It takes a long time to build it back.
Yeah, see, I'm shocked at how quickly we've went from where we were to here.
Yes.
So you're right. I agree with what you're saying. I just didn't realize that until I saw it firsthand now.
Yes.
And
well, you saw it after COVID. Customer service, cleanliness in airports, things we just sort of took for granted have sort of fallen apart because
all over,
of the work ethic and so on. I mean, the only place you really get good service is where you leave a tip. Mm-hmm. Because then, or when you fly business class, because you just something like that, you're still getting good service at a 5-star hotel. But I got to tell you that in so many places the service is poor or second rate. But let's come back to Canada.
Yeah,
because this is our home and native land. We love this place, right? And the country is strong, and it's been built on the backs of people who work very, very hard, right? But it's very easy to squander it. The weird part is that Canada and probably the United States. Where else are you going to go in the world to invest? Are you going to go to Japan? You're going to go to China? You're going to go to Europe? No, I mean,
no, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
So let's call Canada and America the beauty queen and the ugly contest. Let's call it the cleanest shirt in the laundry.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, that's fair.
So that is actually one of our strengths. There's a guy named Peter Zion, and he's written some really good books on globalism.
Yeah, he's an American. Yeah, he's an American guy. Yeah. I haven't read the books. I've listened to a few interviews with
podcast,
him.
Yeah. But he talks about how Canada, America, and Mexico together are really a world. Fair enough. Canada, the resources, America, the ingenuity, the entrepreneur, and Mexico is the labor, right? There's enough in North America to make us a fortress, right? And so I hate to say that we do well because the rest of the world is doing so badly, but money is coming here. Hopefully smart and intelligent and hardworking people are coming here. So that part of it actually is going in the right direction for us when you compare that to, let's say, Europe, right? Or demographic bombs that are going to go off in Japan already gone off, and China, which is going to go off in, right? So.
Just we're not investing in any, like if you look at today's world, for me, I'm like the resources and water and liquid natural gas and oil is so important. I think energy is going to become more and more important.
Yes.
And we have that, and we don't invest in any of it. We just call it dirty, and we say, "Oh, it's a real problem for we don't." There was no thought. We've had European governments come here looking for our LNG. We don't give it to them. We don't sign a contract. We have no pipelines, and instead we sell land. We sell the raw land that these resources are on to places like China. Takes their money and then they invest it, and then they rip our resources out. They manufacture into stuff and sell it back to us. And I'm just like, what the heck are we doing as a country?
We've just been badly governed for the last decade.
Yeah.
And it luckily it's a wealthy country and the land is strong, right?
It is. It really is. Yeah.
It's a pity what's happened, but there's no point in looking back, and let's look forward. The next Prime Minister of Canada has a tough job because we built up the civil service.
Huge. I know.
How hard are they going to fight to keep those jobs.
That's what. So this is and how quickly can they make these changes, and then to make the changes, to be fair, from where we are to where some of us feel like we may need to go.
Sure.
It's painful, and from a political standpoint, it's not in their best interest to make those changes because the incentive isn't there for them to get reelected.
Yes, yeah, and you know what's happened is that the public service and the unions, and they're public service unions. Unions aren't doing well in manufacturing because there isn't that much manufacturing. These are public service unions, are strong. You look at the problems that, let's say, Europe has, Greece has, or France has, and we're kind of heading in that direction. It's going to take a strong leader who may only be a one-term leader, and he's got to say that. Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be worried about re-election. I'm just going to do the right thing.
I know. I don't know. That's a hard thing to find. But because I agree with you. I think Tom, sometimes when we speak, I tell Tom that he's a little bit more pessimistic on things than I am. I don't know if that's true or not, but sometimes it feels that way. And I feel like, and he doesn't think we're past the point of no return either. But I'm like, we're not past the point of no return, but I feel like without some strong leadership coming in, we're approaching a point where it's like, to rewind some things, it's going to be a lot more, even harder than it would be now.
Every time there's a problem, when I see a real estate problem, it's a leadership problem. It's a partnership problem. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So this is all about leadership. And if we get the right leadership in a strong country, we can easily pull this thing back. It's going to take a decade or so to make up for all the mistakes that we've made, but we can pull it back.
So for your grandkids, your kids, you're like, you still feel there was opportunity here when you came here. There was opportunity for me.
Oh, no, for sure. Unless you're super wealthy and being taxed to death. Fair enough. So if you've already made your money, you're saying, look, let's say you had $100 million in the bank. Fair enough.
Yeah.
And you made 5% on that. So you made $5 million.
Yeah.
You're going to pay half of that in tax. So the next year you've got $102,500,000 to invest.
Yeah.
But if you didn't pay any tax, you lived in a tax-free jurisdiction, you'd have $105 million to invest. Now the $105 million getting 5% on again, and then 5% again.
Well, the compounding effect of that changes a lot. Yeah.
Right? Exponential. The number becomes monstrously different in 10 or 20 years. Right? So I think that, I get why we pay taxes. And quite frankly, as Canadians, we're trained to pay taxes. Right?
I don't mind paying a certain level of tax. I like roads and I like bridges.
Spend it properly, not on diversity, not on renaming Dundas Square, not on changing the name of a university, and all this kind of stuff. It's
like, mind-boggling.
You know it is, but so I would say that one of the solutions to Canada's problem is that people might disagree with me, but I don't think we pay our politicians enough. I think a member of Parliament makes $165,000 a year. A lot of brokers in Burlington in a good year make a lot more than that.
Yeah.
Right? So I would say number one is we need to pay our politicians more. We need to get a better group of people in there. Yeah. There's some very dedicated, hardworking, bright people in government. There are. At the federal, provincial level who are members of Parliament, MPPs. But once you start getting lower down, right? So let's get top guys. The Prime Minister of Canada does not make a lot of money. He really doesn't.
Yeah, on salary, but then in future engagements and whatever else.
Yeah. But you know what?
That's for the We charity.
Right. Like, what would it take? Who's the best businessman in Canada? I don't know. Pick someone. Let's say Elon Musk were Canadian.
Sure.
What would it take to get Elon right? You can't pay him what he's worth.
Yeah.
Right. But how do we attract really good and bright people? Well, number one, pay them properly.
Yeah, that argument makes sense.
Pay them properly. Number two, I think I'm not really a fan of the Liberal government, but this guy Morneau, I think Pierre Morneau, he was kind of hung out to dry, and he was a businessman. And I think that said to a lot of people, like, if you're a businessman and you're going to get hung out to dry for the sins of the government, then why would you do this? Fair enough, right? So pay people.
Do you think you could get someone elected? Because I feel like when the election comes around, everyone has to make these promises because someone's going to make the promises because no one talks about how this can be paid for. So they just make these promises. So everyone's just looking at it like, well, what's in it for me? And I'm going to vote for that person.
Yeah.
Because I feel like we have to get to a point where someone's got to stand up and be like, hey, we can't pay for this. Or if we're going to do this, we can't do this.
Yes.
And that means they have to run an honest campaign based on that. And it just doesn't work. Or is that where something like a gold or a Bitcoin comes in, where if further people start further understanding how this money system works.
Yeah, that's a really good point. If you studied gold and studied Bitcoin, I think you would be casting a more intelligent vote. Because
I think
you just
so.
understand what money means. Remember, it's called fiat currency, and fiat in Latin means what I say.
Yeah.
Money is worth what you say it's worth, right? So if you look at, so let's say, we've got Justin as the as the prime minister, and he's down in the polls. He says, what if I offered every Canadian $25,000?
Yeah, he gets in.
He gets in?
Yeah.
And shame on the voter for doing that, because that's moronic.
But isn't that what they did with the last election? Is basically what he did.
Well, if you see what the Democratic nominee in the United States is doing right now, right? It's at $25,000 for anyone who doesn't own a home.
Oh yeah, it's about homeownership. Yeah,
it's going to push the price of houses up. That's all it's going to do.
How don't people like that? When I saw that, I'm like, how does people don't people realize that? We've seen it with low interest rates here. Anytime they do an incentive like that, that's how it works.
We're going to forgive all student loans. So now you get your student loan given $25,000 to buy a house. Of course you're going to but you're bribing the voter, and at the end of the day, it's like giving candy to a baby. The baby's crying, give them candy, so they cry more, so give them more candy.
Yeah, so that's where the system is. I guess then until eventually it just finally breaks to a point where it's like people start seeing through it. Maybe we see what happens in Argentina with their recent election, where people just finally had enough. Even though the majority of the employment in Argentina is government public service, they voted someone in that went in and he started slashing some public service.
I think the guy's name is Milei.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, you gotta like the guy.
Well, I mean, he's trying.
He has taken the bull by the horns. He's made tough decisions.
Yeah.
But do we have to get to Argentina's,
we have to default multiple times? Yeah.
Massive inflation. You keep your money in gold or in US dollars, and you only convert every day what you need to buy groceries, because the Argentinian peso is weak. And does it take that much to make us see it?
So far it has in multiple different countries.
Yes.
So that I don't have that much faith that other people are paying attention, but maybe now that there are those examples, people will open their eyes and pay attention. I don't know.
Richer countries can squander more.
Yeah, 100%.
Canada's a rich country. Yeah. We've squandered more, right? So in a poor, like if Cyprus had done...
you have more gold than the country of Canada.
Yeah, I've got 1 ounce of gold.
So yes. they sold all of theirs.
Oh my gosh.
I think they have 3. I think on the books they have, it's like a random number. I don't know, but it's like a single digit. Yeah. So sorry. So I think I interrupted you, but...
No, but I think that at the end of the day, democracy and rule of law has its value. If you look at England, 1,000 years of uninterrupted rule, a genuine financial system that works, transparency and honesty, money from the world floods into England. Fair enough, from Africa, from Asia, and so on. Why? Because of that. Not that England is that great, but its reputation on money is good. Switzerland is good. Canada, what we did during the trucker strike was moronic. We would have almost had... we had a catastrophic bank failure because people were pulling money out of banks so fast from around the world when they did that, right? But again, this is a government that's just driven by...
ego.
Ego, environmentalism, social justice. Look, at the end of the day, it's the economy, stupid.
Yeah.
The economy that matters.
Yeah. I see. I relate a lot of those things back to ego, because they do it to make themselves feel good, so they can stand tall in front of people and say, look, I did this. And I'm just like, yeah, but you're not focusing without, to me, it's like the airplane approach, which I talk about. I'm like, how they tell you have to put the mask on yourself to take care of other people. If you don't take care of the economy, you can't take care.
Please put on your mask before helping somebody. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So if you don't take care of the economy, you can't do these other things, because the economy falters, then no one cares about anything, any of that.
Have these social programs, you can't have these environmental programs, you can't have these giveaway programs in the economy. Look, with a strong economy, you can actually squander money, right? And we've had a strong economy for a century.
Yeah, and with a 0% interest rates too.
Yes. So all those things. But you know what? We're a good place in the world to be, relatively speaking. That's not a great business case. Everybody's worse than us, so we're the best. But it sort of worked that way.
Well, you're right. That's kind of how it looks right now.
But yeah, I think it's a good place if you're a young person. I think we lose too many young people to the United States because there's just more opportunity there. And although I wouldn't say the United States is homogeneous, there's a big difference between Vermont and between Texas.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
So I'm curious at the level of clients that you're playing with. Yeah, we just a few more minutes.
We're good.
At the level of clients where you guys are deploying these funds.
Yes.
Are these conversations, I'd imagine these are the types of conversations that are being had on a regular basis, because for them to deploy funds, they're looking at the macro environment to see because that's a risk to them one way or the other, depending on what they feel may or may not happen.
Yeah, I think that, when a client is looking at an investment that we bring to them, number one, I'm only bringing them something that they're going to understand. So you don't need thousands of brain power calories. They're already apartment developers or investors. They've just cashed out. Now they're moving their money into something that they understand. So that's the first. I'm not bringing someone a technology play or something like that. I'm bringing them basic real estate that they already hand. So these are people they were swinging a hammer or they had a plunger in their hand, and they just don't want to do that anymore. They now want to put a pen in their hand and they want to become an investor. The other thing too is I would say that generationally speaking, first generation is the visionary. Second generation got more educated, and naturally can sometimes build a business. Gen 3 can't run the business. They're not operators. But they're pretty smart and they can invest and make decisions, but they don't want to have a hammer in the hand. They don't want a plunger in the hand. They're not operators. And a lot of Gen 2s are setting up what you call a family office. That's when you move your wealth outside your business and set up a separate entity. Gen 3 can run the family office and want to run the family office.
Mm-hmm. So you've seen more of that happen.
Yeah. So they're also not only thinking about return. Of course, it's got to be a good return, but they're also thinking about, how do I engage my children? Look, if I could show you a way to get your children in your business and to be excited, but you'd be all over it. You'd be all over it.
Yeah, right? Sure, of course.
Yeah, right. So we found that we run a course every year called Apartment Developer University. And I think we have 40 people in it, right? We had 6 developer sons in it. They said, Derek, I want him to come in my business, right? But most developers, first-gen developers, are like, these are visionary, wildcat entrepreneurial guys. They work 7 days a week. Their kids don't want to do that. Right? So
they've seen what it does to them,
Yeah. They don't necessarily want to do that themselves, but you know what? They could be pretty good kids. They could be pretty capable. They've watched the old man. They've got smart. She's got them educated. So you got to take maybe a less of a heavy-handed approach to your children. And I would say that, and this applies to, I think, all parents. If I had a large company and I wanted my son to join and my daughter join, I wouldn't say, here's a job description, you apply for it. I'd say, I've written a job description for you. Right?
See what's it fit them, write the job for them.
Because if it doesn't fit them, they're not going to come. They've never wanted for grocery money.
Yeah.
They've never wanted for grocery money. And so that's just the reality of it. Do I wish it'd be different? Yes, I'd like them to earn their own way up and suffer the way I suffer and all that stuff, but they don't need to. They haven't had to. And because I want to take good vacations, they got some really good vacations. You see my point? Yeah. And so
we go to Europe. Well, we go to Europe every year for a month.
Yeah.
And
beautiful.
Usually we have a place in Croatia on the Adriatic coast, so we stay there, and then we visit a couple countries while we're there.
Sure,
whatever. Love pretty much every European country. I haven't been to a place in Europe I don't like. It's great. And I'm just looking at it. I'm like, my kids think this is normal. So my kids are much younger. They're 14 and 10.
Right.
And I'm like,
But life comes with a 1 month European holiday.
Yeah. Because my daughter's like, we rent different boats and stuff, and she's like, oh, I really like this boat. Can we rent it for longer next time? And it's about a 50-foot boat. It comes with a captain and a stewardess and stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, we'll just rent it for the month next. No problem. Just doesn't even think about it. I'm like, man, I'm really ruining this girl.
Yeah. Well, you've got the common sense, I think, not to do that, and you want to live a good life and so on. But I think that getting a great education for your children is probably important. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Or the ability to think, the ability to do math.
I was just going to say that. I think I'm not so tied to a formal education for them, especially with the pace at which the schools are moving, and I'm talking universities and stuff, the pace at which information is moving versus the schools. The schools just can't keep up. So I'm like, I don't know, so my oldest daughter's just starting high school.
Sure.
So by the time university comes around, I'm like, it's going to be very interesting to see what that university degree looks like. But I want her to have the ability to think, and that's very important because if you can navigate situations and adjust to things, and you become resourceful to go find the information, those are like the skills. You're talking about the jobs of the future. I find like those are going to be the skills because things are moving so fast that you need to be able to adapt versus you need to be able to study a book and then regurgitate information.
Right.
But there's value to that too. Like I'm always torn on it.
No, we agree. So let's say you want to become a developer. Okay. You've just finished high school. You're like 17, 18 years old. Okay. What's the fastest path to being a developer? Well, I would say from an education standpoint, just take your CCIM course. Fair enough. I think there's 4 courses you take. Okay. Right? CCIM.com. I'm not a CCIM, but my daughters have taken the courses and so on. I speak to CCIM and regularly interface with them, but yeah. So I would say that taking intensive courses.
Yeah, specialized.
Any electives, right? So let's say you want to become a graphic artist. Well, do a 1-year program at Full Sail University in Florida. It's only graphic artwork.
Yes.
Day 1, you're designing stuff. Fair enough? Okay. Yeah. So let's say we start this point. You want to become a developer. Well, number 1, you got to learn the math. Number 2, go work for a developer.
100%.
And I would be the developer's driver.
Yeah.
And I'd say, look, I'll drive, I'll park the car. You don't need to pay me much. I just want to sit on every meeting and I'll be your guy.
Yeah. Fly on the wall for everything.
Yes. Yeah. Like I think you become a developer that way.
Yeah, well, it's the biggest shortcut.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. I've always been willing to learn from other people's mistakes. But again, it goes back to some people just, there's a book called The Ego's the Enemy by Ryan Holiday. Yeah. It's a very simple book. It's just different stories of that. And it always goes back to that to me, that some people they would refuse to do that. They're like, no, I'm better than that. I won't do that.
Well, let's say you went the traditional route to become a developer, right? So you'd finish high school, then you'd go to university and you'd take a business degree or an economics degree. There aren't very many schools that actually teach development, right? But then you have to go at a master's level and do that.
And then you get a job someplace.
Right. So now you're 27. No, how about you can be your master? 24, 25, something like that, right? You've got a whack of student loans, right? Especially if you go to school in America, you have a whack of student loans. You're digging out from that, right? Versus, let's take that guy out of high school. He's now 25. He's got 7 years under his belt already. Now, you bring those 2 people in a job interview, I know who I'm hiring.
Yeah. And of course.
Or financing.
Yeah. And not to mention you're at a different stage in life often later in your 20s, you can be at a different stage of life and you could be more risk averse. Whereas if you're willing to take a chance at, in your early 20s, well, you don't really have as much to lose, right?
The ability to take risk and start taking risk early, right? The other thing that I think is what I've tried to teach my grandchildren, it's hard to teach an 11-year-old this, but I taught her about what asymmetric risk. Like asymmetric risk means you take relatively small risk for a big gain. So we just talk about flipping a coin. Like I said, well, if I flipped a coin and, would you give me 100 odds? Sure, I'm not giving 101 odds on a 50-50 bet.
Sure, yeah.
Right? Yeah, I'll bet $1 to make $2 maybe or something like that, right? So just teach people about risk. Start taking risk yourself.
Yeah.
Right? And so I said, okay, so we were talking about training, right? Physically working out. So you want to hire a trainer. Is that an asymmetric risk? Absolutely it is. Because the trainer's going to work.
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to get your money's worth. What are the chances of a trainer failing?
It's you not showing up is the only thing, really.
Or he's really bad and you hurt yourself or whatever. But you see what I'm saying? So that's an example of an asymmetric risk. Almost for sure. So you take that risk, right?
Yeah.
And so on. So taking risk is important, but take asymmetric risk. The only problem I see with risk at a young age is if you take a couple of risks and they backfire,
do you think they beat you down too much?
Yeah, that happened with my daughters, actually. We did an RESP to save them, and we bought Nortel stock. Oh my gosh, which turned to wallpaper.
I owned some of that too. When I was working at the government, I owned some of that, yeah.
And I remember my daughter saying, Dad, we lost all our money. And we literally lost all our money. I think it was $18,000.
Yeah.
Right? And it was a lot.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So maybe that asymmetric risk is like if you can get a win in the first little bet, like my granddaughter set up a bread stand and started selling bread, and it worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you get those little victories, and then the day she didn't sell any bread, says, okay, but you know what? I did sell yesterday, right?
Yeah.
And so on. Yeah.
For my 10-year-old, when I was trying to explain money to her, which is a hard concept with inflation and stuff like that, but she's interested in it, which is surprising to me. But so I tried to explain it to her, and then I explained to her Bitcoin and stuff, and said,
well, for 10 years old, that's really good.
Well, she had some savings, and I asked her if she wants some Bitcoin. She's like, well, no. And then she's like, okay, well, I think it was like $50. I'm like, okay. And I go, look, and then I made her a deal. I go, just so you know, if the value of it changes in Canadian dollars, and you know, I will always guarantee you that you'll get at least your $50 back.
You hedge the bet.
Yes. And then in her little mind, at 10 years old, she's thought about it. She's like, She goes, okay, I'll put $200, just like that. And I'm like, oh, okay, she gets it. So I don't want to do that for forever, but she's 10.
That is an asymmetric.
Yeah, but she right away
all the upside. Yeah. With my investment stays the same.
Yeah, and
I'll take a piece of that.
Yeah. So she clued onto it. Oh, I'll send you some Bitcoin. Don't worry, we know. Lightning Network. But hey, man, look. So the last thing, and we're out of time, and I appreciate you doing this. What's really cool, like it's cool to hear about the apartments and stuff. Yeah. But what's really cool is seeing, like, it's like the stage you went to now is, you know, and everything you want to talk about is like teaching kids and helping people transition from this stage of their business with their development onto the next generation and that type of stuff. You've really taken it to another level, to like a deeper level. It's not, you can tell it's very not transactional for you, and it's really cool.
But you know, you still got to keep the doors open, and as entrepreneurs, we still count.
Yeah.
Enough.
Yeah.
So the business still has to make,
of course,
economic viability. It's just that it becomes, I think, as you get, my coach Dan Sullivan says this, cash confident. You've got everything taken care of, right? You can have little wins and little victories and things like that. Let me just tell you about, a lot of your investors are brokers also. Like, you have a lot of brokers?
No, most of them aren't.
They're not. But you know, once you take on the role of being an entrepreneur, you have agreed to live in a lumpy world.
Of course, yeah.
Income's going to go up, income's going to go down. There's going to be wins and there's going to be losses, right? And the wins can get you really excited, high, and the lows can get you really depressed.
Yeah.
Fair enough. One of the things that I did as a broker, and I don't know how I learned this, but when I think about my income, I use a 3-year moving average.
That's a good way to look at it.
So you want to smooth out the peaks and the valleys, or look at your deals. You win one, you lost one, or you win two, you lost three, you know, and so on. Because look, we thought real estate was always winning for the last 10 years. Turns out it's not.
Yeah.
Turns out it's not. But if you've got a loss in one and you won in 5 before, fair enough, average the 6 together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, well, you have to. Nothing's ever going to...
Yeah, don't focus on that loss.
That's taking a big picture point of view.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's emotionally hard sometimes. I think people are feeling it right now. Like, I feel like over the last 12 months, but probably over the last 6 months, especially, people, not just in real estate, in every industry, everyone I talk to, business owners, like everyone's really has been really feeling squeezed. The good news is I talked to a couple other business owners too that really also feel, they're like, you know what? The last 4 to 6 weeks, it feels like there's a little bit of just a change in sentiment, you know?
I think you're right. I think there's been a decided, let's say in the last 6 months, sentiment change of being down.
Yeah.
Fair enough. There just has been, right? But I think in every downturn, if I think about it, I've started 4 businesses, and of those 3 worked. Fair enough. All of them I started in downturns. And we just started a new business called the Self-Funding House. Yeah,
I'm going to have Rod, we'll have Rod on another time, so we'll go deep into that.
I hired a president, Rod Scholhauser, to do this, and he's great. He's a real tactician, you know, entrepreneurial guy that gets it. But the point is that these difficult times that we're in, and it may get worse, it may get a lot worse, create opportunity also. And that's the way you get through this, is to think about the opportunity, right? Take that risk, have some dry powder. I'll say last thing I'm going to say. I've watched a lot of people over the last 30, 40 years, right? And I'd say if I've seen one thing that's led to success, it's been this. The person who had the ability to raise money did well. Sure. Yeah. Because but what would you felt there was always an opportunity there? Yes, I did. There's in a down market. Yeah. If you're prepared to do work on a contingency basis. Okay. So I got into the leasing business in 1990. It was a bad recession then, right? Yeah. That was the worst one. That was probably in Canada. Yes. Yeah. So it was 1990. In 1990, my motto so I would go in and do lease ups of buildings at 100 empty apartments. And my motto was, if we don't rent, you don't pay. That was my slogan. If we don't rent, you don't pay. I did 100% contingency work. And so I would say to your listeners, and when you're an investor, it's contingency. If it works, you make money. If it doesn't, you don't, right? As soon as you ask for a salary, you just brought your income steady, but you brought it down. Yeah. right? No peaks and valleys anymore. But so I would say contingency. Do work on contingency. If I produce a result, I'm happy to pay you.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of lessons in what you just said. I think there's a lot of lessons that go beyond just income, whether it's establishing self or anything. So yeah, that's a good way to leave it.
Yeah,
that's a good way to leave it. Okay. Derek, thanks so much for your time. It's actually been really good seeing you. Appreciate you coming in, man. Really do.
All right, good. All the best.